Welcome to Make and Decorate, a podcast for makers who love to sew, quilt, and decorate. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Make and Decorate podcast. This is episode 12, and this is a special episode because it's coming out on Thanksgiving, and I have a super duper special guest on today. So if you've got any sewing plans for today or cooking or whatever it is that you're doing on this great holiday weekend, be sure to listen, download, tell your friends, and share, rate, and review Make and Decorate. I know you're going to enjoy this guest. So without further ado, oh, wait, there is a little bit of ado. So I want to remind you, I think I went over this on the previous episode, but I made a special email for the podcast, so it's easy for you to get into contact with me. And that email is info@makeanddecorate.com. So much easier. I think you could remember it better than my whole Stephanie Sewciety design, yada, yada. So hopefully that's easier. And anyway, it'll be easier for me because it's set up specifically for the podcast. So my main email is not going away. So it's still stephaniesewciatydesign@gmail.com. But I set up this new one for the podcast to make it easier for everybody to remember. And secondly, I am looking for feedback on a couple of future episodes. The first one I've kind of announced a few times, and I also did an Instagram post earlier this week on so you can go to my Instagram, and it's under the hashtag Make and Decorate Podcast. If you have any questions about your sewing machine, no matter what brand, how to take care of it, if you have issues, troubleshooting, anything about maintenance and care of your machine, and you want to get an answer from an actual sewing technician, let me know. You can send an email to that email I just mentioned, info@makeanddecorate.com, or go to the hashtag Make and Decorate Podcast. That, and then the second thing I want to ask for feedback on is on a future episode, I am going to be talking to an owner of a quilt shop and a sewing machine dealer. So I actually just thought of this today and was thinking that, hey, maybe people have questions about that. So anything you can think of, just reach out and let me know. All right. Now on this podcast, I will tell you that I have sort of like a blooper reel at the very end. So make sure that you keep listening because there is a little part that I just didn't want to delete. We kind of had to recall. When you do remote interviews with people through Skype or from audio or whatever, there's always a chance of a technical difficulty, whereas a phone line drops, the signal's not strong. So we had a short little conversation about our names, and it's really funny and cute. So I just left it in, but I put it all the way at the very end, like a little blooper reel. So be sure to check that out. And now let's get on to this podcast. So today I am beyond overthrilled, over the moon, excited to have Stephanie Kendron from the Modern Sewciety podcast on my podcast. Woohoo! Oh my gosh. This is so awesome. You guys, I have been listening to her since she started her podcast 4 years ago, which is, remember, that's how long I told you I wanted to do my podcast. Over the years, I've, given her feedback when she's asked for it on her podcast. And, she's been so gracious. She always returns emails, and she's very kind and real. And, just gives you some honest feedback. And she's been very encouraging to me. She has known that I've been wanting to start a podcast for a while, and she has offered any type of help and support that I needed. And I really did ask her a couple of questions here and there and really appreciate it. So I am so thrilled to have her on today. So you guys are really going to enjoy it. And you all know who she is because she's Modern Sewciety. So, hey, here we go. Hello, Stephanie.
Hey, Stephanie, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I am so excited to be on your podcast. I have to say congratulations on really starting something that I know has been a little bit scary for you. So way to go. And I'm excited to see where this goes for you.
Oh, thank you so much. I did have some hesitations, and just because my personality is such, I research everything to like the nth degree, and I want to be fully prepared. And I just started, I was just doing that too much and thinking that I had to be perfect. So, I talked with several people and a couple of people who already had podcasts in our community. You had been very supportive of me the entire time. Very nice. I emailed you out of nowhere. And I really appreciate that. You just really don't realize how much your support to me emailing you does. So it really gave me a boost of confidence. I really appreciate it.
Well, my advice was probably stop researching and just go by the seat of your pants.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It was great.
Because that's kind of how I have done my podcast. I mean, my husband, I actually was talking to Corey Yoder and from Coriander Quilts yesterday for a podcast interview, and we were somehow talking about our kids walking around with headphones, and I was like, I can't get onto them because my husband does it. And she was like, oh my gosh, my husband does too. and it was just so funny to think my husband is, the one who suggested that I start the podcast. And usually I'm very, I don't know, doubt myself, doubt if I can do it or if anybody will listen to it. And the podcast has been the one thing that I did not second guess at all. I said I want to do it. I remember sitting in church and the name came to me. I immediately got out of church and was Googling to see if the name was already taken, and it wasn't. And, I didn't hesitate. And I think it's the Southern girl in me just likes a good conversation. I think that is the way I connect to people. I am the person who will talk to anyone. Not kidding. I was in TJ Maxx and in the shoe lane, in the shoe aisle, and trying on shoes, and this lady beside me picked up this pair of shoes with Dr. Scholl's. I'm just going to give them a shout out. I love their shoes. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, you should totally get those. And she was like, well, I have a conference and I really need some comfortable shoes that are cute. And I'm like, those, girl, get those. And she looked at me and I was like, yeah, we don't know each other, but I'm totally telling you something. But I love a good conversation. And I think that it's just a knack for me with this podcast.
It is. You're very natural at it and very down to earth. And I think that's why your podcast has become so popular in our community. You really are very warm and just down to earth. You say you have dirty dishes in the sink, and I'm like, yes, I do too. Yeah. And I love it. There's so many things that it's I'm sure everybody does this too. You're just yelling at your speaker. Yes, me too. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it has been. It's been a fun ride, and this year I'm mixing it up. I kind of am going back to the basics and really just having guests on that I feel like I want to talk to, not necessarily for any reason other than I love their work. And I mean, if they have something to promote, that's always great too. But some of them don't. And they're like, I'm not sure I have anything to talk about. I'm like, don't worry about it, girl. I got you covered. I will ask all the questions. I think I'm curious about other makers and how they get inspired.
Yeah, that's me too. And I knew coming into doing my podcast that, I would have to build up a listenership, and that, I would need to, it took up the pressure off too of not having to talk to, the big wigs in the industry that really need their time is limited and they've got to go where they're going to get, the return on their investment. So, yeah, I'm doing the same thing just because I am starting out and I love it. And same as you, I think there's so many podcasts too. I listen to a ton of them, and I gravitate towards the podcasts that have stories and that really gives you a glimpse of other people's lives that are kindred spirits to you. And I think you do the same thing.
Yeah. And I will say, don't be scared of those big people with big names and big numbers on their social media, because
I am.
So many of those people are incredibly, incredibly kind. And some people are really business oriented, and it is, like a business transaction, and that's okay too. But you will be really surprised at some of those names that you are intimidated by, how incredible they are at just getting to the story level of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Taking the, I'm a big name in this industry, and just really, I think they really like the makers. So I'm going to encourage you to not be intimidated by them, but
okay. You will. Okay. Got it.
All right. I'll keep
That's
emailing
awesome.
you about that. Okay.
No. All right. I love it. Thank you. So your podcast, you started, like I said, 4 years ago. And so you started, I think you first published it maybe in a November, and then I didn't discover you until the January. So you'd been on for a couple months only, but still. And then since then, I've just been listening ever since, completely
I love it.
Loyal. And
that's awesome.
Yeah. And I have really enjoyed watching you evolve your podcast and incorporating the changes that you did. You even would try stuff and, say, well, you know what? I'm trying it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And then I also love that you ask for the input of your listeners, which I try to do too, because getting the feedback, I think, is hugely important. But talk a little bit about that. Talk about how you've really defined the structure of your podcast and how it's evolved, and, what your, plans are going forward.
I think that I love change, and I am the kind of person that changes up my house, and, while everybody's at work and school, and they come home and I'm like, surprise! Your bedroom's totally in another room. And I think that I thrive on change, and that has worked into my podcast for sure. I do try things out. Some things I really enjoy and some things I don't, and I will stop doing them. I do ask for input, and sometimes I'm like, okay, that's what you think. And it's hard sometimes to take that input and not take it personally, but I feel like the podcast is almost my reflection of my love for change, and I'm not scared to do it on the podcast. And one podcast that I feel like really helped me go, this is okay to do that, is The Art of Simple, which she's changed her name now. It's Tish Oxenrider's podcast. So she just kept changing her podcast. And then she was like, I'm totally changing it. It's going to be something different. And Jess Lively did the same thing, totally changed the structure of her podcast to fit the season of her life. And those ladies taught me, it's okay. This is your podcast, and this is who you are, and this is your reflection, and make it what you want it to be. And so I kind of have fearlessly done that, and some things really work and some things really don't work, and that's okay. And sometimes I put out a lot of episodes, and then sometimes I take breaks. And while it's always on my brain that I feel guilty, I still know that it's okay to do that. And I think in this environment of the everything, do everything, say everything, be everything society that we're in, I try really hard not to fall in that trap with the podcast. I do take time off when I need to. Yeah,
and I love that. And I don't know, for me as a listener, I've come to just accept and embrace that. I know you're going to be back because you're always come back. And when you take your breaks, it's usually during summertime, and people are all traveling and busy, and everything anyway. So, I mean, it's kind of fun. I usually know that when fall comes around, I'll be hearing from Stephanie Kendron and my
Yeah.
podcast feed.
Yeah. Well, I love that. And, I think sponsorship has kind of changed that a little bit for me because it's hard to take off the summer when you have sponsors. And then this past summer, I really I didn't realize I didn't feel good, but my husband was like, hey, girl, you're not normal. We need to go to the doctor and talk about this. And I'm glad that he did. I didn't notice this funk that I was in and totally feel better now. But I think the sponsorship aspect of it is a little bit hard to take time off. And that's something that I'm having to adjust and say, I'm sorry. I've learned a lot this year to say, you know what, I'm sorry, but this is going on. And, if you don't want to work with me anymore, that's okay. But, I just can't be everything all the time. And I have to apologize and take some time. So I don't know. It's a give and take.
That's true. But I have noticed in other podcasts that I do listen to that there seems to be a trend of doing seasons versus continuous all year round.
Yeah.
So, I mean, do sponsors respond like, they seem to have their sponsors and they're only on for maybe they'll have 12 episodes for their season.
Yeah, I just started back recording this month, which is a crazy month. Like I have recordings pretty much 3 times a day, almost like every Monday through Thursday of this month. And I record up, which I have learned works really well for me because the season of the holidays is about to be here and craziness is going to hit. So yes, and I say that this new season, and I kind of try and put myself into that box, but then I totally work myself right out of that box and record all the time, So and I'm okay with that. Like, I'm okay with saying that this is a season and then it never ending and then like taking a break and being like, okay, I'm back. And I think that I'm just having to give myself grace for that. I'm having to just say, you know what, it's okay. That's who you are. And hopefully, like you said, as a listener, that's okay for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I guess now I wanted to you have a variety on your podcast, which I love, and I try to do that as well with mine. And you do a lot of different types of sewing. So you do sew clothing, and you also quilt is one of your main things that you love to do, right?
Right. I do sew clothing. Sometimes I cheat sewing clothing. I'm not going to lie. Like, I don't follow all the rules.
But that's okay because, I mean, you're wearing it or your kids are wearing it and you post the photos and they look beautiful.
Yeah, no, I do enjoy quilting is definitely the one thing that I get. I like the math of it. I don't really like math, but I do enjoy quilt math. Clothing is totally different when it comes to the math aspect of it. But yeah, I enjoy sewing just pretty much anything. I mean, it doesn't matter. I will make a bag. I will do all of those fun things.
Mm-hmm. And then you had said that you really started seriously sewing back in 2007. What how has that evolved and what have you kind of grown into with your sewing and learning, what I don't know, it's an investment. So you can't do it all. You want to do it all, but what have you found that you just really you gravitate towards and that you love it so much?
Oh, I try and do it all. I mean, I'm not even gonna kid. Like, I try and do it all.
I love it.
And it's funny. Like, I talk to people on my podcast and they like do one specific thing, and I'm like, oh, I wish I could do that. Like, I wish I was laser focused like that. I'm not. I totally have ADD when it comes to sewing.
I know. Me too. Yeah.
Like it's crazy. And how has it evolved? Well, I mean, one thing that's evolved is 2007 is when I had a baby, my first child, and got a sewing machine. And my mom and my grandma have always been creative and sewed. And my mom used to make these dresses for me, which she did not keep. And I have daughters, which really just I wish she still had. But I mean, she was crazy good at making garments, and she made quilts as well. And so did my grandma. And So I just tried everything in 2007. That's when blogs were kind of taking off. So I would want to make something, like I want to make a pillowcase dress for my daughter. And I would, Google it and find it and try it. And sometimes those things worked. And I feel like those years, the early years of me sewing was a lot of not working, but it also taught me, like, 1/4 inch seam, and on garments you have a 1/2 inch seam, which I don't always do that. It just taught me the little quirks of the different kinds of projects, like a bag. For me, I'm a really big, especially with bags, I have to make one time and mess up a million times during that one time I make it. And then I'm like, oh, okay, now my brain understands how to construct something like that and make it work. And then I can make them really easy after that. But I think I've just evolved that I don't have to really reference anything anymore. I can pretty much figure anything out sewing. Whereas back in 2007, when I started, I had to reference everything. I had to go online. I had to find a book. I had to find the information out because I didn't know how to do it. Whereas now I feel like I can pretty much figure stuff out when I want to make it.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I've been seriously sewing almost just about as long as you. I started more in 2008, towards the end of that year. I had sewed on and off before that, but not really like, on a daily basis until then. And that is so true, because now there's always a way to fix something. And back then, I would be afraid to cut into specific fabrics because I didn't want to mess it up. Now I cut into everything. I want to use my fabrics, and I don't, keep them so precious anymore. How are you with your fabrics?
Oh, I want to be that way. And sometimes I am. It's really funny. Sometimes I am super fearless and I just go for it. And sometimes I'm not, which is it depends. I think I have, I think it's really hard for me to make something and give it away with my precious fabric. I kind of want that fabric to be what I keep. And
Right.
then I'm like, but do I really need, one more quilt in my life? But I have 2 daughters, and I just can't wait till they go off to college. I'm going to be like, and here's a quilt for your couch, and here's a quilt for your bed, and another quilt for your bed, and here's your quilt rack that's going to go on the wall. So I think I try to be fearless, but the perks of having a podcast is I do get a lot of material from fabric manufacturers and companies now that I don't have to buy a lot, but it's still precious. It's still, and a lot of these designers I've become very close with. Not all of them. I'm not like buddy and we text every time, but I feel invested in their stories a little bit more because I've had them on the podcast or I've met them in person. And, I just feel a connection to them that is different than I did before.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's really interesting. And really with the fabrics too, this is one thing, going back to your podcast, that I really love, because you are always on top of the new fabric line releases that are coming out. And when I started sewing in 2008, I didn't really know one line from the other. And now I know, a ton of them, and, you
sometimes
you know what fabric lines you like, and you're looking forward to them coming out. And I learned from you. Your podcast really teaches, the different fabric companies and all the different fabric lines and what's going to be released and what's coming out soon.
I think that has totally changed, though. In all honesty, it's so saturated, and I think it's going to continue to be an industry that's going to have to evolve, because there is so much that comes out every spring and fall. So many different lines. And while I love them all, I really love all the makers. I think that with social media in the age of the internet, which, wasn't always a thing, right? You didn't always. I talked to someone yesterday who has a product called Chenille It, and she was talking about, like, back in the day when she went to market, there was no internet, there was no social media. So that was your only way to connect, right? If you had a product and you wanted somebody out there to have it in their magazine, you went to market and that was your only way to figure out that connection. It's not like that anymore. And I think that our market and our industry is changing. And it's really, I don't know, it's going to be interesting to see where that goes. But I do really, there are a lot of fabric collections out, and I do like having those designers that have collections coming out to come on the podcast and talk about it, because I think then you connect with that fabric line in a different way, right? It's not just that you see stripes and florals and polka dots in a line. You go, oh, that was inspired by her grandmother and her grandmother's love for those things when she was little. And, as an example, and you connect in a different way. And that's why I really like having those chats on the podcast, because I don't know, it's different when you buy a fabric line that the story behind it a little bit more.
Yeah, it's that connection, and it just brings a little bit more of a special, specialness to the fabric line versus we're cranking this out. Because you're right. I actually even get like very fatigued with, the multiple introductions. And I did just listen to your episode with Andover, with
Daryl and
Giuseppe. Yeah. And I kind of liked that it was released now, even though you were talking to them around spring market time, because now is when that fabric is being released. And I'm like, this is great. I love this so much more than talking about this 4 months prior. And it's, you're painting this gorgeous picture and excitement for something that's not even going to be available for another 4 months. So I love that, because everything they were talking about, and I had just gotten my Missouri Star email and I knew exactly what the Adita Sitar collection they were talking about, because that's on their daily deal today. So it was awesome. I really liked that.
And it's like talking about that, like we've known about Giuseppe's line for a really long time, but it doesn't come out until November. So, my plan was to not have it out this late after we talked, but I like that it's serendipitous that it's happening as the fabric is about to come out. And then, because I feel like when you do hear about these things 4 months in advance, then when it does come out, you've been so inundated by everything else that it's easy to forget, or it's easy to get bogged down, or like me, when you get like that, you just avoid. You just don't look.
Right. So, that was cool. I really enjoyed that. And then now we're going to be into another fall, like a fall market. So, it just, that just never ends. But I've just learned to just really, like, I hone in on, like Allison Glass. I love her fabrics. I love her collections. And I'm on her newsletter, her email list, and I love getting updates from her. So I kind of just, instead of inundating myself with everything that's out there, I've kind of picked and have chosen the ones that I really absolutely love to follow all the time and want to see their new releases.
Yeah. And it's funny talking to people on the podcast. One of my lightning round questions is solids or prints. And, it's always funny. I like solids and I like prints. I think I'm probably lean towards more prints, but everybody in this industry has what they like and what they gravitate towards, and that is different for everyone. So, I think of it as a super saturated market, but there are all these different makers using it in very different ways. So it's fun. It's fun to see it and to have your favorites and to kind of follow along with them and see their collections come out. And so I like when a designer has collections one after the other that can meld together. So you could use, right, like Allison, you can use pretty much of all of Allison's collections together in one big quilt and it would work.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah.
So, and then this past summer, you had a series of Cricut podcasts, and you actually you taught a class, right?
I did. Oh my gosh.
Talk about that. I'm really excited to hear that. Now, first of all, though, I am a silhouette user, but it's a very similar, the machines kind of do the same thing, but you actually like taught the Cricut. So go ahead and talk about that.
Well, but does the silhouette cut fabric?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
But here's one thing, though, I learned from your podcast. There's a Cricut machine that will cut fabric where you don't have to put the heat and bond on there in order for it to cut it without, like, wrinkling it and fold. You know what I mean? Like you have to stabilize it first. A silhouette, you do have to put some sort of a stiffener or stabilizer, something like that, in order for it to cut it.
Right. So the Cricut Maker is the new machine. And what's cool about the Cricut Maker is it does not have a blade like permanently in it. It's an innovative tool system that they have. So you can get a knife blade to cut like chipboard and stuff like that. You can get a rotary blade to do fabric, which you don't have to put anything on it. You can literally put your fat quarter down on the mat and cut it. And they have a bigger mat now, which is 12 by 20, and they still have a 12 by 12 mat. So a quarter yard, right, fits really good on that 12 by 24. Mm-hmm. And then they have just the regular blade, which I don't remember what that's called, that you can do like cardstock and vinyl, all that fun jazz. And I did go and teach. So I am one of their influencers. And they sent something out that said, we're going to have the Mountain Make-a-thon put in your proposal. Well, I was like, okay, what does that mean? What do they do? Like, my husband's not going to be like, yes, let's pay for you to go teach a class. Like, do they pay you to do that and all of that? So I sent an email to Shelly from Coral & Co. and said, hey, Shelly, do you think I should do this? And she's like, without a doubt, put your proposal in. And I'm like, I don't know. And she's like, no, do it. Try it. If you get picked, you're going to have the best time. And so I nonchalantly, in I don't know, 30 minutes made this proposal about teaching podcasts, because I really feel like that is one thing that you can do for your business to connect with your customers in a different way. And so I really wanted Cricut. There isn't a Cricut podcast, right? There isn't a podcast out there that just talks about the Cricut machine. Mm-hmm. And so I thought it was a great market for me to go into. And a lot of those people didn't really know who I am, because Cricut hasn't cut fabric before like this. So this new machine just came out last year, I think. And I felt like they were going to have this audience that they could be introduced to in the sewing world. So I went and taught a design space class, which teaches you like design space is their interface that you do your projects on before you send it to the machine, which is Bluetooth. It's so stinking awesome. Yeah. It is so easy. So I can do it on my desktop and Bluetooth it to the machine and like it's just so easy. So anyways, I taught that class, and then I taught a podcast class trying to talk the Cricut influencers into starting podcasts, because I love podcasts. It was great. It was the most fun. It was amazing. It was in Salt Lake City at the Little America Hotel. And the one thing that I liked about it, the story lover in me loved so much that the company started with the opening ceremony and went all the way to the closing ceremony, telling their story as a company in new ways, right? So they had the CEO came up there and told a story. They had, really big name influencers say how they grew their brands and used the Cricut. Then they have, now listen to this, listeners, they have 4 professional crafters that all they do is use the Maker in different ways and post for Cricut.
Wow.
Yeah. Like they go to Cricut every day and their job is to figure I was like, shut the front door. Like and it was so they have these 4 scenes set up, and these 4 young ladies from all different backgrounds. Like they all had, one had a fashion background, one had a graphic arts or whatever, and they told their stories, and then they told how they came up with these different scenes and how they used the Maker to do the different projects. It was just amazing, and it made you really understand that this one machine can really do a lot of stuff. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see how I'm going to transform my sewing process with this machine, because I do think it can do some really cool stuff.
Right. I mean, that's amazing. I was even just amazed with the silhouette, and I got that last year, and I was able to design a multi-layer large peacock applique on a double wedding ring quilt that I was commissioned to make for someone. And but the one that was the only one drawback. And now this Cricut Maker has that where you can just toss your fabric in there and it's got a rotary blade. That's revolutionary. That is really going to change, I think, the scope of even like the die cutting part, because I also have the little ones. I've got the little what do you call it? AccuQuilt.
Yeah.
Baby Go. And then I've also got the little, the other one, why can't I think of the name of it?
But the Sizzix one?
Sizzix, yeah. But those dies are so expensive. And
you have to keep them somewhere.
Right. And with the Cricut and the Silhouette machine, you just have to have digital SVG files and you can do anything.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. I'm going to check this out, because when I was looking for that, I don't know if I've even noticed that they had that available.
Well, and I think that the cool thing about this particular machine is that I don't think they're going to phase it out. I think they're just going to keep making different blades for it, right? They're going to keep figuring out different things that they can use this machine for, not necessarily getting a new machine, but maybe just buying a blade, which I think is so much better for the consumer, because you hate to buy this expensive machine and then the next year they come out with something different, which has always probably been what has happened in the past, right? They had, I don't know, like a Cricut phase 1 and then phase 2 and 3, but this particular machine, I don't think that they will change it much, because it is really just the interface of changing out those blades that is so easy for them as a company to do, and so much better cost-wise for a consumer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's really great. And I mean, I talk about that with sewing machines, even, where it's always the next model and what was wrong with the machine I just got like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And especially the machines that have software and then they stop supporting them. I mean, it's just heartbreaking. So, and software and technology is expensive. So people invest a lot of money in that. And I don't know, I just find it a little sad that, these machines have such short lifespans. Whereas, people now are still collecting the cast iron Singer machines from like the 30s and 40s, and they work beautifully today because they're mechanical.
Yeah. Now I have a Janome 1600P, which is all mechanical, and let me tell you, I mean, don't get me wrong, it only has straight stitch, so you're limited to what you can do. But if you only make quilts in piece, it is an amazing machine, because there is nothing really to go wrong other than you have to get it serviced. But I mean, you do need another machine if you want zigzag and all that other jazz. But mechanical machines are awesome.
I love mechanical machines. I have the Juki 2010Q, which is similar to your Janome model. It does the straight stitch. It's very easy to maintain, and you don't have to take it to be serviced as often as you would a computerized machine, because you're maintaining it every time you sew on it. You're oiling it and, keeping the lint out. And I mean, there's nothing really, because it's mechanical, so there's no computer to break on you.
I probably need to oil mine more than I do.
But it starts making that little noise, and then I think it needs a little oil.
Yeah, that's me. It does make weird sounds sometimes, but I mean, I think that was smart of Cricut to do, and I hope that I get to go back and do the next Make-a-thon, because it was just so much fun.
That is so cool. It's really interesting. It was refreshing to get the series that you did, that 4-episode series with these Cricut makers. And I ended up following the one, Laura Nunez, is that her name? She has a YouTube channel.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. And she does a lot of sewing projects too, which is it's fun. She does smaller things, and I met her at the Makeathon, and she was amazing. I really, really loved her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I went and watched one of her videos, and she made this it was a little like a little sewing bag for your threads to go, your
Oh yeah, like a thread catcher.
thread catcher with a little pin cushion. Yeah, it was really cute. And her YouTube, she gave instructions even if you didn't have a Cricut, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so those were really interesting episodes, and I definitely want to check out that machine because that's half the battle with the silhouette is making sure that the fabric will not get all like mangled with the blade when you're cutting it.
Yeah, no, it works really good. And then they just have where you can just get the replacement rotary blade. But I don't know. I'm really excited to see how I can work that into even my patterns, right? I mean, you can make a pattern for a quilt, but then if you have those files there's a whole huge community out there that is just tapping into this whole sewing world because of that machine, which is amazing.
Yeah, that's so cool. Well, good. I look forward to hearing more about that because you said you're a Cricut influencer?
I am. Yep.
Oh, that's good. All right. Well, you should give us some more stuff on that.
I know. I do posts for them. I actually have some coming up. But I don't even know how they got in contact with me. I'm glad that they did. I love that company. I really loved everybody that worked there. And I guess one of my biggest takeaways from that experience was put yourself out there. I mean, I could have gotten a no, very well could not have been accepted, but I put myself out there. I sent it in, I got accepted, and I now have a really strong relationship with this company, and they've introduced me to other companies who hopefully will, I will start working with and have a relationship with. So it was a really important thing for me, and I'm very appreciative to all of them, and I love the employees that are there, but put yourself out there.
Yeah, you're right. That is so cool. You never know what will happen, and what's the worst thing that could happen. You're in the same, nothing bad. I mean, no one's going to die.
Right.
You got to just put yourself out there.
I just don't tell people when I do things like that. So if it is a no, then nobody knows but me.
Yeah, that's probably a good thing.
I mean, my own little secret.
I love it. Cool. So let's talk about sewing machines because everyone is very interested in what machines people sew with and use. And I think it's really good to find out from people who are actually using that machine because you know all the ins and outs and how your machine works. And I know you sew with Jannomi's, right?
I do. I just got a Janome Skyline S9, which has an embroidery component to it that I have been too scared to try. I actually have a friend who knows how to do embroidery coming over this week to kind of help me jump into it. Cool. And I'm doing that because of Sulky, one of my sponsors, Sulky Threads. Kelly that works for them also got a different Janome embroidery machine, and we are going to try and do some things together with the machines and to help promote Sulky Threads. But I really love the machine. It's super easy to use, and it's just, they have the walking foot it just makes things really easy, like binding so much easier. Going over thick layers makes it so much easier because it, top and bottom get pulled through. So that one's kind of new to me. I haven't had that one very long, but it is an awesome machine. And I really, really can't wait to kind of dive into that one a little bit more. And then on my long arm frame, which is just a Gracie frame, I think it's called Gracie frame. Just a simple frame, not a big long arm frame, just a simple one. I have the 1600P, which is just a straight stitch machine, and it works. It moves, on the long arm frame. Really easy to to set up. It's a cost effective if you don't have like thousands and thousands of dollars to put into a long arm. It's a really good setup, and it's not as expensive as, like the $20,000 crazy ones, but which I mean, I would totally get if I could, but I've sewn on everything. I mean, I have the first one in 2007 I got on Amazon was a Singer. Gosh, I don't remember exactly the name, but it was a step up. It wasn't like a cheapo Singer. It was, probably the $400 model. And I loved it. Actually, my girls still sew on that same machine, and it still works like a charm.
Oh, nice. That's good.
Yeah.
What about serging? Do you do any serging?
I do have a serger. Funny story with my serger is back, I guess, years ago when I didn't have the podcast then, but or any connections or a sponsorship with Janome, I guess I should say. But I on Craigslist, I really wanted a serger, and I went on Craigslist like hours from here in a town that I knew my friend lived. And why did I search there? I have no idea. And I saw that there was one, and I said, hey, would you hold this for me? And she was like, no, you just have to be the first one here. So my friend from high school, we were really good friends, but I mean, we didn't talk a lot, right? And she probably thought I was crazy because I was sewing. I was like, hey, so there's this Bernina serger. And she's like, what is a serger? I'm like, don't worry about it. It's a sewing machine, but it's $100. Would you go pick it up? Like, that's a really good price. And she was like, yeah, I will. Took off work for me.
Whoa.
Went and got this serger for me. The lady held it, and she had 3 or 4 people like try and pay her triple the amount of money for it that she had just paid. And she was like, listen, I don't even know what this thing is. I'm buying it for a friend, and I know I'm not going to sell it to you, but please stop. I mean, like she said, people were really mad that she wouldn't sell it to them for more money. And so I still have that serger. Actually, a part on it just broke, and I had to get it serviced, and it's still going strong. Oh,
that's such a great story. I love it.
Yeah,
I can't believe you got a Bernina serger for $100.
And it was so funny too, because she was actually coming to see like her dad, so she brought it to me. Oh, and I'm, yeah, totally awesome friend. I should send her a quilt. Like now that I'm thinking about that.
But I call those moments kismet. It was meant to be. Just how everything just falls into place. Oh, that's great. And you're still using it today. That's awesome. See, that's a great thing about sergers too, because they're mechanical. So they can last forever too, which I love.
And I think a lot of people think of sergers as, I just use them on clothing. Not the case for me. I square up my quilts with my serger. So I will quilt them, and then I will serge around the edges before I put binding on. And I love it because it makes that bulk of where you put the binding on so much less with the serger, and it makes such a good strong outside to your quilt, right? So you put that binding on, if the binding ever wears out, which it will if you wash it enough, you're still going to have that serge edge that will really keep it strong.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a great technique, and I've started doing that in recent years. I probably heard about it on your show, because I think Krista does that too with Krista quilts.
Yeah.
But I love it. Yeah, I use it for that. And you're right. I mean, I use my serger for a ton of stuff that's not clothing related. I mean, I use the 3-thread stitch to do like a satin stitch on tablecloths and napkins and everything, tons of stuff.
Oh, so, I've not figured out any of the stitches. I just do the one. Like I haven't figured out any of the tricks. It's just the normal old serger.
But at least you're using it for the quilt, to square them up, and I mean that's a huge use for a serger. But people are afraid to learn the stitches and the different threading and stuff. So I'm trying to like encourage people to get to know their sergers better.
Oh, I probably should. I mean, I definitely, without a doubt, should. I think I'm just lazy, but I have mine. And if you go on my Instagram, which is Modern Sewciety, I have some posts in my stories that, are saved on my profile about serging your quilts. But I also have my serger on I don't know what the name of the cart is that you can get, the ragcop cart or something. Anyways, the cart that you can get on wheels from IKEA, and now they have them everywhere. You can get them anywhere. And
yeah,
I
know which one you're talking about.
It. Yep.
It's that teal one or the aqua.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So I just have it on the top of the cart, and it makes it so easy because it's not the machine that I use every single day. So I can push it back and then pull it out when I need to do something. It makes it super portable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the other thing I think that is part of an issue, because if it's not out where you can see it, then no one really feels like lugging out a machine to set it up and take the time. So then they'd rather just, forget it. I'm not going to do it.
Yep.
So
yep.
I know I try to keep my main machines out. And like you said, even if it's on a cart, it's so easy to pull out that makes it that much easier. Cool.
Yeah.
So I've written down a lot of stuff you've talked about. So I'll put links in the show notes to everything. And if there's anything else you want me to put a link to, just let me know.
All right. Well, I love this. And seriously, keep it up, Stephanie. I know that our community needs more of these conversations, and it's so important to connect on such a personal level with other people. So keep it up, and awesome job. Yay for you.
Oh, thank you so much, Stephanie. And I just, again, I thank you so much for coming on and talking with me. And I just want to give you kudos because you are well loved by everyone in our community and industry. And I just really appreciate that. And I appreciate the contribution that you make. And I want to do the same thing. So,
yeah,
I mean,
I want you to too.
So that's great. Well, I guess, I don't know. I see this is the thing I have to learn is like how to end smoother of the podcast.
Oh, okay. You know what? And I think that is, to me, that is the fun part about podcasts, is that it is the realness of that. It's like if we met in a quilt store, right? We had this chat, and then you just kind of learn all of those things. All of this did not come, super fast to me. It's just the more you do it, the more you learn, and you'll figure it out. And I think that people connect with you when you're being real, and that is part of it. How do you say goodbye when you want to keep talking? Trust me.
I know.
There are many times that I'm like, no, I don't want this to end. But then I get emails. It's like, well, your podcast download is so big. And I'm like, well, I'm really sorry.
You never hear that from me. I love long podcasts. There's someone that podcasts and she only does 20 minutes.
Oh, those are hard.
Yeah. And she's like, I hate the long, it's my commute's only 20 minutes. And I'm like, 20-minute podcast? No, I love the 45 minutes to an hour podcast because I'm usually doing something that takes that long or in the sewing room or whatever. I don't know. It's to each their own, right?
I totally agree. Oh, I have a new podcast that I will totally give a shout out. And it's not anything to do with sewing, but I'm so enjoying it. Is Ross Matthews is a comedian.
Oh, yeah.
And he has, and Trish Sir is one of his friends, and she's super Southern, which I relate to pretty much everything she says. And they have it's called Pop Talk, and they talk about all the pop news stories, like POP. And it's so much fun. They do the top 10 of like the week, and they do the 5 through 10 really fast. And then the top 5, they kind of take their time with. And it is so funny. And it kind of gets me, in touch with what's going on in like the pop culture world, which I don't keep up with. So that's a really fun one. And it comes out, I think, on Fridays.
Cool. I wrote that down.
I really like that one.
I love podcasts. I listen to all different kinds.
Me too.
There's this food one that I've been listening to all year. It's called Eat This, Not That.
Yeah.
And that's a short, version podcast. So I kind of save up a few and then I have like a whole 40, 80 minutes of listen time with them. But that's a good food podcast.
I love food podcasts. I listen to Bon Appetit. I listen to Eat or Upsell. I listen to Gravy, which is by the Southern Food Alliance. I am a huge foodie podcast person.
I wrote down Gravy. That sounds interesting. I like the name.
It is very much a storytelling podcast.
Oh,
it's
cool.
really good. Yeah.
All right. I'll put that in as well. All right. Well, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so, so much. I've enjoyed talking with you. And like you said, I could just keep talking all day, but
No.
you're a
Yeah.
busy working mama and you've got things to do.
Right. Well, thank you so much for this opportunity, Stephanie.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Yay! Wasn't that so great? Oh my gosh, I had the best time talking with Stephanie. And there were, a few spots where the signal kind of got a little weak and there were little blips, but overall, when I edited it, I just left everything in, and the little glitches were not too bad because you could still kind of get the gist of what we were talking about. So anyway, wasn't that fascinating about the Cricut Maker? Oh my gosh, so amazing to be able to cut your fabrics without having to stabilize it. I still love my Silhouette though, and the Silhouette is still a great machine, but oh my gosh. Thanks for listening to the Make and Decorate podcast with Stephanie Socha Design. Come find me on my website at stephaniesochadesign.com and check out the show notes page. Post your comments, send me an email, let me know what you're up to and what questions you might have. I'd really love to hear from you. Toodles, until next time. Bye. Hey, thanks for sticking around all the way to the end. So I have the little blooper sort of, it's not really a blooper, it's just our little conversation that we had before our call got disconnected. So here's your little bonus. Hi, Stephanie.
Hey, how are you, Stephanie?
I know, we're Stephanies. Thank you so much for coming on the show. You're Stephanie with Modern Sewciety podcast. And, just a real quick thing about our names. I grew up never knowing one other Stephanie at all until I was a full-grown adult in the sewing craft, community. And now there's so many Stephanies.
It is so funny how many Stephanies are in my life now. I mean, seriously, there's Stephanie from Hobbs Batting. There's you. There is another Stephanie that came up in an email that I had to do the other day. And there are all of these, and I love it. And today I'm actually, or this week, actually, today it was supposed to be two Stephanies and one had to reschedule. And it's just so funny that, that happens. And I did not like to be called Steph unless we were super good friends. And so when people call me Steph today, I'm like, no, my name's Stephanie for you. You're not, no, you're not allowed to call me that. Are you like that with your name?
I do the same thing. And it's weird because if I'm in someone I don't know, but let's say you're, I don't know, doing buying a car or something. And then they're trying to be all cool with you. I'm like, hey, Steph. And I'm like, no, you don't know me that well. You cannot call me that. Stephanie.
Yes. Yes.
And my family calls me Steffi. So that's even more of a, but no one.
Oh, yeah. You are not allowed to call me Steffi unless we are super close. Okay.
I get you on that for sure. All right. So this really is the end of the show. I really hope you enjoyed it. And I wish everyone a happy and blessed Thanksgiving weekend. And just enjoy the ones around you, your loved ones, your friends. And just take everything in and enjoy your weekend. I will talk to you next time. Bye.